Hey guys, it's Janie. Welcome back to the Crafting Bookworm. I've got a series review for you today. Okay, welcome back, you guys. If you are new here, I welcome you to my channel. Um, so I wanted to talk about, I read 4 books in August, but what I wanted to talk to you about today is Deadlock, and then the first book, which is Deadfall. These are by Robert Liparulo, and he is a Christian fiction writer. Let me see here, and I'm going to read you. Deadfall is the first book, and I'm going to just read you that synopsis. I'm not going to read you the synopsis of the one that I read this month, just in case it would give something away. I don't think it would give anything away, but because they're separate cases, and they're not even really cases, because just let me read this to you first. Okay, this is for Deadfall. Okay, so deep in the isolated Northwest Territories, 4 friends are on the trip of a lifetime. Dropped by helicopter into the remote Canadian wilderness, Hutch, Terry, Phil, and David are looking to escape the events of a tumultuous year, which included a bitter divorce, a job loss, all those things. So they're there for 2 weeks, and they get to do hunting, fishing, and camping. Now they're only armed with a bow and arrow and the basics for survival, and they've chosen this place far from civilization, a retreat from their turbulent lives, but quickly discover that another group has also targeted the remote region and the secluded hamlet of Fiddler Falls, which is a town right next to this area. But they're there for a more menacing reason. And they're there to field test this ultimate weapon. With more than a week before the helicopter rendezvous and no satellite phones, they must risk everything to help the townspeople of Fiddler Falls, who are being held hostage and terrorized. An intense novel of character forged in the midst of struggle, survival, and sacrifice. So, I read that book earlier. I think I read it with my sister, and we read it in January. That was back in January. The book was super intense, because you've got this group of, I might have a review of Deadfall, or it might just be in a wrap-up, but it's a group of youths, and the leader of this group is called Declan, and just, they're not nice people. So this is the John Hutchinson series. So John, along with his friends, or Hutch as they call him, are going to go and sacrifice some things and try to help the townspeople, because this group has taken over this entire town, and they're threatening the people, scaring the people. They get them all taken hostage. And so these 4 guys want to help any way they can, and they're hidden out in this remote area in the wilderness. But the group does discover, or have already discovered, this Canadian wilderness that this town is next to, because they're testing this ultimate weapon, and it is a weapon of major destruction. And the book, like I said, is super intense. So we skipped reading book 2 until August, because there was so much that happened. You kind of have to take a break and a step back from this. The good thing about this series is there's no swearing. None of that kind of stuff that you don't want to read. There is violence, and there is, but it's, representing good versus evil. Okay, so It's very fast-paced, very intense. So just keep that in mind. Robert Liparulo always writes books that are like that. Um, I also read Comes a Horseman by him, but I read that before I actually got my Goodreads. I think I got my Goodreads in 2013, and so it says I did not read Comes a Horseman. But I think my sister and I are planning to also read that one, and also Germ. I want to read Germ by him as well. And Deadlock is, it started a little bit slower for me, so it didn't have as much of a thrill in the beginning. We'll just say that. Um, Hold on a second, and I will read you the synopsis for this one as well. This was the last book that I read in August as well. Okay, so this one says, because I wasn't going to do this, but it doesn't really give anything away, I don't think. If it does while I'm reading it, then I just won't read that part. Hutch is a newspaper columnist, and that's the thing, is he's not even a detective. He writes for a paper. Okay, Hutch is a newspaper columnist, a single dad, the last defense against a lunatic's high-tech killing machine. Special Forces veteran turned billionaire Brendan Page has some dirty, not-so-little secrets. He's built an empire on supplying futuristic weapons, so that's where they're tied together. And highly trained soldiers to the world's most powerful armies. But he saved his most destructive weapons for himself. John Hutchinson, or Hutch, a Denver newspaper columnist and avid bow hunter, has figured out the truth about Brendan Page and is determined to bring him down. But he's up against a warmonger linked to assassinations, kidnappings, and terrorist activities. Hutch quickly uncovers a plan that seems unfathomable in its recklessness and loss of life. Yet he's just one man up against impossible odds with no plan B. Thankfully, it's just the kind of environment Hutch thrives best in. If he can survive the next 3 days, Deadlock will grab you from the riveting first page to its white-knuckle climax. Okay, so, like I said, it started out a little bit slow. It was interesting, but just a little slow. Where in Deadfall, it was boom, right from the beginning. Right as soon as they got dropped into that wilderness, things started to happen. But Deadlock's a little slower, but let me tell you, it is worth the wait. Because when it got to that point, it just went on, building up, and it was just, there were times where I just had to sit the book down and let it resonate and let it get absorbed in my brain, and then I could go back to it and read. But it was pretty intense. Now, like I read in the synopsis, we're dealing with Brendan Page. And there's a couple of characters from the first book that are in this one that I love. I don't want to give you the names because I don't want to give away something that could or may or may not have happened in the first book. So I don't want to give you their names. But Hutch, as I also read, is a father. He has 2 kids, and he's divorced from his wife. But Brendan Page is this big dude, and he's big dude as in he's way up there in the ranks, and he has control of a lot of stuff. So it makes it hard for Hutch to get around each thing that he needs to get around to kind of stop him. That's all I'm going to say about that part. I don't want to get too involved because I don't want to give away those parts that really show good versus evil, because Brendan Page is pure evil. Like I said with these books, and Robert Liparulo is a Christian fiction, so he does not write with foul language, and that is the number one thing that I appreciate in his books, in any of these books that are from Christian fiction writers. I feel like Robert writes along the same lines as Ted Dekker does, because Ted Dekker also writes very intense, adrenaline pumping books. And I love thrillers. And so Robert Liparulo, Frank Peretti, Ted Dekker, they're all fantastic writers when you come to this kind of stuff. So I do recommend Robert Liparulo to you guys. I do recommend Deadfall and Deadlock. Maybe take a break in between and read something a little bit lighter. There's a lot of great books out there by Robert Liparulo, and he is a great writer. I think Deadfall and Deadlock were both 4-star ratings, or maybe Deadfall could have been 5. I can look, but I'd have to search it up. Deadlock got 4 because, you know, it did have a little bit of a slower start. But man, it is worth it, you guys. It is so worth it. So, like I said, I recommend these books for you guys. If you have read any Robert Liparulo, let me know down in the comments. No spoilers or any of the books that I haven't read, because there are several that I haven't read. But let me know what you think of his writing, what you think of the books. If you've read the John Hutchinson series, these 2 books. I think it's just a duology. There's no other books in this series, I don't believe, unless it's like a long span of time and he's going to write a number 3. But, yeah, fantastic. Let me know what you thought. But that's it for this video, you guys. I thank you so much for staying tuned, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.